doing that, and let's just have a chat. So I know we've actually done a topic like this already. We did a topic about how to handle your mindset when the COVID thing first hit, because it was such a massive impact and so many people were kind of, their heads were spinning. The reason that we create the topics generally comes out of the conversations we're having in the forums. We do ask people to give us feedback about what they're interested in hearing. So the idea behind this is more about resilience, and Eleanor, some of your experiences with isolation and what you had to do up here while that was happening is pretty critical. But I think that, you know, we've all done the work from home thing. I think that's become a bit more of a standard sort of practice now. And we're sort of moving into a routine based on how long this is going to go for. So what we are seeing, and we all know that there's an issue with mental health in terms of people feeling isolated and stressed. So that was really why we thought it'd be worth having a conversation about this again. So Eleanor, from your perspective, you've got a story that you'd normally tell. What do you think is the thing that you'd be most wanting to get across?
So I think there's probably two different directions that I could go. So I might, can explore both of them. So one could just be, so there is just the row story and the resilience aspect, like you say. A lot of the takeaways, I guess, that people have had from that so far through COVID have been around dealing with the overwhelm, when you feel like you can't really carry on anymore, and just the compounding effect of the small consistencies. So that could be one angle. The other angle, which I think could be really interesting for this group of people, is more around psychological well-being and improving their psychological well-being and fitness, sort of around, if you're trying to build the flourishing garden, you can't just pull the weeds, you need to actually put things in to be able to help you improve as well and actually build in the really positive things. And there could even be a micro adventures aspect to that. That's sort of one of the things that I do around sort of helping people's psychological fitness and well-being. It's a little bit of a niche thing though as well. So they're probably the two avenues.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks. I do think that we do tend to get some people, because I know you were involved in the startup scene in Bundaberg. Is that right? Is it Bundaberg? No, Mackay. Where are you?
Bundaberg. Yep.
Bundaberg. Yes, yay. So I've just been talking to lots of different incubators recently, and I'm just trying to remember who's where. So we do find that some of the people who come on board have a sort of a side hustle. Some of them are employees and they're growing something on the side. So, it's very important in terms of understanding how you juggle all that stuff at the same time too. All right, that sounds great. And so, because you're involved with the incubator, then you've got your own company as well now.
Yeah, so I was the co-founder of The Generator. I sold that one at the beginning of last year. So I'm now the adventurer in residence with QUT Entrepreneurship. Yep. So that's very much sort of the mindset, going knowingly into the unknown, which is similar for business and adventure. And then I'm in the process of launching another micro adventures company at the moment called Voxer, VOKSER.
Cool. And what does Voxer do? So tell me about a micro adventure.
A micro adventure is a short, accessible, overnight adventure that's close to home. So basically it's going camping even in the middle of the week. So you can leave your work at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, go out, camp for the night, get into nature, get into the outdoors, and return back to your desk for 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. A little bit less light if you're doing it during winter, but it's quite a big phenomenon in the UK. It hasn't really been very well sort of explored here in Australia. But of course, there's so many of the psychological known benefits of nature and the outdoors. And then so I'm looking at doing a program specifically for women in Southeast Queensland as the initial sort of offering, that's gone through multiple iterations during COVID as well. So
I bet. Oh, that's good. We need to talk, because I don't know whether you've noticed our branding, but everything about Groei is all about going for a hike. It's actually part of our story. And we've talked a lot about doing strategy hikes, where you actually will go on a hike and work out your strategy while you hike. Yeah. No, but we'll do the strategy bit. You do the hiking bit. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's because our programs are all about helping businesses understand how to drive their strategies. So that's the bit that we sell, as opposed to bit that we do for free, which at the moment there's lots of free stuff. Cool. Oh, that sounds great. Excellent. All right. The other thing I didn't talk about is we have to work out what order you would like to go in. So what I thought we might do is just hear from each of you, and then we can work out what might make the most sense. Because we've on the flyer, we obviously had Eleanor and then Karen and then Mark, kind of in that row. It doesn't have to be like that. It really just depends on where you think the story flows best. So, Karen, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I guess that what I would be focusing on is let's put our effort towards clarity over certainty. So we don't have certainty, and people really want that certainty. And while they're searching for it, I think that they get more overwhelmed and more upset, and they're really trying to get back a sense of control. So we've been talking a lot to our clients about what can you be absolutely clear about, and then take a step towards that. So the people, I think, have surprised themselves with how adaptable they've been. I think there's a lot of self-talk out there about the fact that this is too hard, it's too difficult, it's too challenging. And whilst that is true, the vast majority of us are still standing upright, and we're still being able to move forward, and we can still actually have enough to support other people around us. So, you know, I think that there's been a real tendency to move towards leadership as a service, you know, that I will serve others, I will look after my community, I look after the people around me. And that has actually only been a really positive thing. I do think that there's also probably a fairly clear, there's an undercurrent of where it's people really are struggling, and they're not comfortable to say I'm struggling, because the rest of the world's saying, well, you know, it's not so bad and we're going okay, that it is okay, that everyone does things at a different time. We've got a different brain, no two brains are the same, but the way we'll get forward is through recognizing you've got a choice. So you can choose every single day to say it's too hard, or you could choose to say, I need to make a phone call to Bill, because Bill each day is going to say, well, what's the one thing we can talk about that's actually going to be a little bit better today? And so I think that I could speak about it from a position of that, you know, there are habits that we've been involved in our research with QT that really help you adapt to ambiguity and uncertainty. And, you know, first and foremost, that's mindfulness. And it's around about taking that choice around being mindful, and what does that look like? It's around about understanding what does curiosity mean for you, and how do you go about moving forward, the focus and courage that comes with it as well. So I could choose a few of those particular habits to have a chat about. But I do think that there's great advantage in people knowing that it's okay not to have certainty, because even though our brains crave it and we look for it everywhere, if we can be clear on a few things, we can get certain about that. And so what can I control to get to that step? And it might just be from getting from 2 o'clock or 2:23 through to 5 o'clock for some people. And for other people, it might be, okay, cool, it's the beginning of a new financial year. What's the first quarter look like, and go from there. So it'll be something along those lines.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. I saw you posted on LinkedIn today about curiosity, and I think that's a really interesting way of framing this, because we don't see that as a resilience habit, I don't think, in terms of a way of being able to reframe how we might react to something in terms of asking a question rather than just seeing how it impacts on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah, because if we go through a questioning process, it gives me some control, because I'm asking the question and I want to keep going to that next step. So even if I've got a fairly defensive mindset about my questioning, at least I'm moving forward. I'm not just going, well, this is it, this is happening to me. And that's an important thing around change, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, managing change is not going away. I think that everyone keeps thinking, oh, what is the new normal? And maybe the new normal isn't a thing. Maybe it's just like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
A combination of something like this, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Or a whole new thing. We don't know. So I'm interested from your perspective, Karen, what are you seeing is the biggest question that you're getting asked at the moment?
We get asked, can you actually learn to adapt? Is that something that I can build a skill set around? And so understanding whether I can do that. I guess, like, totally separately, as you said, you know, we tend to work with some fairly big organizations, and it's people want to be definitive about what the next normal looks like. And so they really want to understand that so they can move forward towards that with a degree of comfort. So obviously we don't have a definition of that, and I don't believe we ever really will have one. So it's those type of things. And without any doubt, it's about trust. So it's been really interesting watching how some people have really stepped towards that trust. And what I'm finding, and it'd be interesting to hear, and it's probably bigger organizations that are grappling with this, I'm not sure, but it depends on how you want to tell your story. So some leaders are telling a story that productivity has really dipped and we've really struggled and everyone has to come back to work. But there's a real bias, conscious or otherwise, associated with that, and it's normally based on what their preference is. And so if you've got someone else, like just even one of the partners from, I think it was KPMG, was on last night and was saying, you know, that initially, like, of course, we had a dip, like the grief curve, we had a little dip, but then we went, oh, hang on, we're back up. And so people's capacity to trust that if I can't see you, do I know what you're doing? So when we had to do that, we trusted. Now that we don't necessarily have to because businesses are going back, what I'm finding is that like this, the trust scale is sliding back down for all the wrong reasons. I can't quite work out why that would make sense for that to happen. But it's because we're creatures of habit and we go back to where we're comfortable. So trust is a massive part of, the conversations we're having.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I do think that the difference between the bigger corporates and the smaller businesses is corporates have had to juggle so many people being in a space for such a long time and then not having them as a really different kind of environment. Whereas most small businesses are, well, it was me and a few other people and, I'm happy to just be me anyway. So actually it's less stressful if they're not here. And I don't think there's been as much pressure around that. But certainly, how do I trust them if I can't see them working was a really big question to start with for businesses with staff. Everybody else just went, oh yeah, what's the big deal? We're just doing what we've always done. If they've had one or two people. So Mark, from your perspective, you've done you work in kind of coaching and executive leadership development in terms of personal effectiveness as well.
No, that sounds good to me. Just before I get into that, we were talking about change a moment ago, and we all know the quote, change is the only constant. What I love about that quote is it's from a Greek philosopher from about 300 BC. So that whole concept is over 2,000 years old. It's nothing new that we're dealing with in the 21st century. It's timeless. It's never been. It's always been an issue.
Yeah.
So I guess with my conversation next week, I want to talk more about. I guess we can look at resilience from 2 points of view. There's we need to feel resilient when we're coping with a lot of stress. So there's some first aid sort of things we can do about trying to manage stress and ease the stress in our system. Or what I like to do is take a more holistic approach and look and take the view that our resilience is highest when our emotional well-being is at its strongest. Okay, so rather than trying to treat the symptom, let's look at what creates emotional well-being for people. And there's aspects of that which in how they think about themselves, are things like self-love, self-care an issue for them? Do they think that's important? The ability to be vulnerable and share intimacy just actually gives people a lot of fortitude and strength. And they're things you've just got to practice in order to get good at. And then that impacts on our relationships. And when our important relationships at home are strong and healthy and we're taking care of them, that feeds back to us all the time. So I find that by doing those things and working with my clients around how they see themselves personally, how they consider their important relationships and the care and time they put into those, their resilience, their emotional well-being naturally builds, and they just become so much more effective in work and career and all of those other things, and better able to cope with stresses when they come up.
Yeah, so it's all very much about start with yourself first in terms of you're trying to work out what's going on in the world. And we were talking about high value time. And Mark said to me, my high, I said, oh, well, between 5 and 7, most people aren't that busy. He said, oh no, that's my high value time. I go for a run. And I think that's something that we underestimate the importance of. It's always, if I have time, I'll exercise, as opposed to actually that's my highest value time for myself.
Yeah, completely.
Eleanor, you must have experienced that kind of stuff in terms of the fitness work you had to do preparing for going away.
Well, coincidentally, you say that, not really, because I only had about 6 weeks notice to jump on that boat. So there, there was some fitness work, but it was very, very fast and furious, I guess. So there was, not a great deal of notice, which was sort of part of the, craziness, I guess, of jumping into that boat itself.
So I'm not sure. So Karen, you obviously sat next to Eleanor at dinner, so you've probably heard her story. Yeah. Did you get the dinner version?
You got some of the more gross details from them with a few people around the table at the end of the night, I think.
I'm sure there were some gross details. Are they public or not?
I won't treat your audience to if they're probably not going to be ready for that at midday on a Friday.
Okay, cool. All right. So anything else that you want to add that you don't think you've said yet?
No, I'm pretty good.
No? Beauty. All right. So what do you think is the right way that you'd like to go? We were sort of thinking that Eleanor might tell her story first, because it is unique, obviously, in terms of not many people in 6 weeks go, oh yes, let's go and sail across the Pacific. That would be a really good idea, or roll across the Pacific. But that was obviously an adventure all in itself. So what do you think? What would you prefer? Anyone got a preference?
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to go anywhere. It doesn't worry me at all. So
okay, all right. Well, let's do. I'm just wondering whether we start with self. Maybe we'll do Mark and then Eleanor, and Karen, you finish up. Does that make sense? Because I think that, if we talk about ourselves first before we talk about the impact we have on the world, then that might sort of, and then we can talk about how some of the things you experienced, Eleanor, might set you up for, the future decisions that you might have to make, particularly in this market, and how you've managed to apply some of those ideas and learnings. And then Karen, that means you've got the wrap it all up on top part.
No worries at all. I'll take the anchor.
All right. Cool. All right. So the only other thing that's worth mentioning is that at about 11, we like to try and have you dial in at about 11:30, just because if there's any trouble with you getting onto Zoom, or if there's problems on the day, it just means that you're there and ready to go. Generally, once you've logged in, we can, feel free to go off and do other stuff until about 5:02. Generally, we do get some people who are early, so we'd love you to be ready to go at 5 to 12. Both of you look fabulous in terms of your lighting. Mark, you've got a lot going on behind you at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'll fix that before then. Yeah.
Okay. It just is a bit distracting in terms of your visual stuff. That's fine. Otherwise, your sound's good. Your lighting's pretty good. And that's all that matters. Is just because we're recording, it's useful for you to have something that looks nice at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Beautiful. Everybody, thank you so much for your contribution and for agreeing to be a part of this. It really makes a massive difference, and everyone gets so much value out of hearing our speakers. So it's really great to have you all on the team, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
And lovely to meet you, Mark, and good to see you again, Eleanor.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you all.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. All right. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.